And joining me now, I'm so pleased to have Democratic New York Congressman Richie Torres, a member of both the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus, and he is also Puerto Rican. Congressman, we've known each other for a while, and it's great to see you. The New York Times sums up that Trump rally as, quote, a closing carnival of grievances, misogyny, and racism, a capstone for a campaign growing increasingly dark. What are your reaction and your personal reaction, you, your family, your friends group, to what was said that was not, challenged by the former president himself, not by his campaign until 7 hours later when the thing really blew up?
Well, I was deeply offended, not only as a Puerto Rican, but as an American. There are more than 3 million American citizens in the island of Puerto Rico. There are thousands of Puerto Ricans who are serving in the U.S. Armed Services, risking their life for the country without enjoying equal rights that are available to the rest of Americans. And so these Puerto Ricans are doing what Donald Trump has never done and will never do, which is serve their country. So I thought what was done was outrageous. And the so-called joke from the so-called comedian was not a miscalculation. Hate is the core calculus of the Trump campaign. Donald Trump has spent years inciting hatred for immigrants, inciting hatred for Latinos, inciting hatred for any and all people he considers to be enemies from within, right? So hate is not an accident. It is the consequence of who Donald Trump is and always has been and always will be.
And Congressman, the fact that the Trump campaign has been actively courting Latino voters in Pennsylvania, for instance, going to Reading recently, and arguing that the Hispanic vote is turning more Republican. What does this mean in terms of the narrow margins in states like Pennsylvania and Georgia and others that have large Hispanic populations?
Look, insulting the people of Puerto Rico, as the Trump campaign has done, is not only bad morals, it's bad politics. There might be as many as 500,000 Puerto Ricans in the state of Pennsylvania, 100,000 Puerto Ricans in North Carolina, 65,000 Puerto Ricans in Wisconsin, 50,000 in Michigan. Donald Trump's insistence on insulting the people of Puerto Rico is an act of political self-sabotage. And the Puerto Rican community is sizable enough to decide the outcome of the presidential election. And it's not lost on those of us who are Puerto Rican that when Donald Trump was president and when Puerto Rico had one of the worst natural disasters in its history, Superstorm Maria, Donald Trump abandoned Puerto Rico. He did everything he could to sabotage the reconstruction and recovery of Puerto Rico in its moment of greatest crisis. And that's something that most Puerto Ricans will never forget.
I think the image that one remembers, perhaps a metaphor, is the paper towel toss when he did go down there. And let me just ask you also, though, about a new ABC News, a recent ABC News Ipsos poll showing that still a third of Hispanic voters support Donald Trump. So something's not getting through, or something's going on there. What do you think from your community experience?
Look, the Latino community is not a monolith. And historically, the community has been bipartisan. George W. Bush won as much as 40% of the Latino vote back in 2004. But also the electorate has short memories. I mean, some people have forgotten how corrosive and divisive Donald Trump can be. And the only upside of the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden is that it reminded all of us of who Donald Trump is. It reminded us that his animating principle is not hope, it's hate, it is fear. His whole campaign is built on stoking the flames of fear and hatred against people who are different from him. Donald Trump often speaks of making America great again. Well, I think he's given every indication that his exclusionary vision of America has no room for Puerto Ricans like myself.
Congressman Torres, is your district, I know some have been redistricted, are you still the Bronx?
Exclusively the Bronx.
Go Yankees. Thank you.
Go Yankees. Absolutely. Go Yankees, go Harris.